In a world where the use of technology has become so pervasive in marketing and sales, could the use of old school direct mail marketing strategies still work? Our guest, who is someone who's been able to reach tens of millions of consumers across the US using such techniques, should be able to give us answers to that question. Hello, and welcome to the Predictable B2B Success Podcast, brought to you by Sproutword.com. I'm Vinay Koshi, and our guest today is Ross Youngs. And Ross, you're a serial entrepreneur who's created an innovative direct mail solution used by clients such as Target, Mercedes-Benz, Disney, American Express, and more. In fact, you are the CEO of Univenture. Univenture is a full-service designer, manufacturer, and distributor of packaging and marketing products. In fact, one of your fastest growing consumer brands is called EnvyPack, which is manufactured out of Ohio. And they've developed a clear bioplastic product, including clear envelopes. And I believe those who use these clear envelopes have had phenomenal success, not only in terms of higher open rates, but in some cases doubled their response rates as well. I'm curious and would love to dive into that a bit more. But Ross, you have been an entrepreneur since 1988, I believe, hit the Inc. 500 5 years in a row with one of your companies, being the board member of another company that hit the same list, was named the nation's business person of the year in 1998, won grants from ARPA, DARPA, US Air Force, and now the NIH. So with such an illustrious list of accomplishments, I'm curious, why go old school with Univenture and get into the whole direct mail business?
Great question. The way I look at almost every market, there's always niche opportunities. And if you have an opportunity to do something that's better, faster, cheaper, or differentiated, then you're not running with the pack. I don't like running with the pack with anything I do. I like doing things different. And quite frankly, I love doing things better. So that's one of the objectives we try to seek whenever we pick a type of business to get into. And certainly, the EnvyPack is one of those products that stands out as very different from what comes in the mail every day in and out. And that creates a different level of response rate from those that get to touch it, open it, and interact with it.
So of those listening in, it's not just about creating a better mousetrap, it's about differentiation to everything else in the marketplace. Would that be correct if I'm hearing you correctly?
You're exactly right. So one of the advantages of a bioplastic envelope is that it actually feels different, looks different, and stands out in your mail pile. And with that differentiation, you tend to gravitate to it. You hold it longer, look at it longer. You typically want to open it. So there's this allure to something just a little bit different. And I think that's part of the opportunity you get, because if you're just a paper envelope amongst all these other paper envelopes, it's harder for that to stand out. Now, the big advantage about the EnvyPack is it's a flat envelope that works in mailhouse automation, and it also works in postal automation, meaning it's the only plastic envelope that goes at the same rate as a standard envelope that may be made out of paper. So that's another differentiator, is it saves dollars in postage, but yet you still stand out.
Brilliant. I'd love to get into more of how you started the company and have grown it to what it is today. But I'm also curious, given your journey to date, what would you say is your personal area of strength?
Innovation. I've always had a knack, whether I worked for others or worked for myself, to see things just a little bit different. And when you see things a little bit different, you get to think about it differently, and you get to ask a lot of questions that maybe people in the field just don't bother asking themselves because they're stuck on a certain thought path. So I think it's been an advantage of me to be able to cross fields. I consider myself a generalist, but I think I've had my hand in a tremendous amount of innovation, new products, new technologies that have been quite successful. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot.
And in that area of strength, What would you say is something that businesses don't know but should?
Yeah, I think it's all about people. So if you create an innovation culture, then what's going to happen is people get excited about the way you think. Now, you have to be cost effective at implementation and execution, and certainly in the process of research and development, you should be streamlined. But I think the people that are, let's say, driven by your enthusiasm, when you talk about all the pieces that need to come together, you're constantly teaching them what you expect. Then you get your team to agree on a wide range of things. And what happens is the team teaches the next team. So you build a true culture. And I think what's key to building a true culture is you've got to have an absolute fearless environment. So if I'm walking through manufacturing and somebody from the manufacturing floor says, "Hey, Ross, I've got an idea," I'm going to go over there and I'm going to listen to them, because odds are they're speaking up because they see something others are not seeing. And they should be fearless about being able to say that. And that's one of the things we try to do.
Point you bring up there, because you mentioned people getting excited about your ideas and the vision, so to speak. And I would think that vision is part and parcel of being able to innovate. But on the other hand, there are almost inevitably in most organizations, at least a small group of people who, if not resistant to the idea, would be thinking, why change things when they aren't right? It's interesting that you mentioned finding a team, or at least working with a team, to create some degree of buy-in, if I'm hearing you correctly, to find ways to get this idea off the ground, who then also become champions throughout the organization or the wider organization to take that same message to others. Am I on the right track here?
You really are. And I think one of the things that it's not just leadership that I want people following. I want people to take and own leadership as well. We'll still judge the value and the opportunity. If somebody came to us with an idea that sounded great, but it had $1,000 a year market potential, it's going to get shot down. If somebody comes to us with an idea that could be a multi-million-dollar market potential, but they don't yet know how to pull it all together, that's the easy part, because then the team can work on it. So I think empowering the team to be able to move forward under any circumstance is key. Now, certainly, that means you got to dot I's and cross T's on what you're doing within your core products. And you can't just be, I'm going to create a new product every day and think you're going to be successful. It's got to be very deliberate. But I do think it starts with an innovation mentality and a type of culture that supports that. Now, with that means some decisions are set aside and somebody's feeling might get hurt. We're not trying to hurt feelings. We're trying to run a business, and every business has a cycle of all products. You have your ramp up, you have your startup, you have your cash cow, then you have the end of it. And I know there's people out there that believe the products they have in their mix today will always be here. And I would say that's a dangerous thought process to have, because if you don't try to continually improve, you don't try to continually find an opportunity, then you're taking your eyes off this particular product or product line opportunity, and ultimately you're going to lose out. Some of the best companies in the world have been able to continually make improvements in their products over the years, and that improvement process can be a widespread opportunity across many segments. It could be the product itself, the manufacturing itself, the raw materials itself. It could be the way it's marketed, the way it's sold, the way it's partnered. There's so many opportunities to find and improve. And that's the challenge for some companies. They just make something, put it out there, and watch what happens. And that's not a long-term success type opportunity generally. It's going to come back and bite sooner or later.
It makes a lot of sense. Cultures and innovation culture is important. You talked earlier about differentiation, especially with UniVenture, but would you say that has been not just foundational, but a key driver for growth, or has there been other aspects to grow UniVenture to what it is today?
Yeah, I think it has been a key driver, and I think part of it is listening to customers. So certainly we know what we know, but we've got to keep our ears open, not only internally, but externally. So I think we've had a lot of opportunity over the years to engage customers, listen to them, make a better product, or make even a customized product for them that really fit what they needed to do. Now, we've also gone down the path where one product might have ended up growing to 600 SKUs, and we had SKU creep that was just a little bit too far. So, you reel that back in and you bring that back down and you start to talk about your customers about which one of these three products are going to fit your need versus we already have 10 or 15 on the shelf that'll fit this need, and now you want to design another one. So sometimes it can get a little out of hand, and I think it's really important for the team to be able to recognize that, reel it in, and stay focused, because focus is always key to success.
I'm curious, I mentioned listening to customers. I mean, that's a term that gets thrown around a fair bit. Everyone would acknowledge that it's important, but in terms of innovation, fitting not just the feedback, but the perspectives that they bring or possess into this innovative culture that you have within the organization, what does that look like? How does it work?
Yeah, that goes across, again, quite a wide area of disciplines. And sometimes you'll have a customer just say, I need a lower price. I need a lower price. And usually that means, what can we do together to still meet the needs and ultimately find a way to meet the demands on your business? Sometimes we've been able to do that, sometimes we haven't. I really like to improve a product's performance rather than just cut the cost. If I've got a customer talking to me about, we're not getting this, we need to reduce the cost, I would rather dig into it a little bit deeper and say, what are you trying to do? How is it working? What kind of testing can we do? I would rather look at it as a process rather than just a knee-jerk, let's react and let's make a change that could be a disaster. Because we've seen that in the marketplace before, when people have just made changes and their sales suffer, their performance suffers. So I think it's a process to understand what's really trying to be achieved and how to meet their customers or their goals, more importantly than just, hey, we've got to slice the price. Because opposite of slicing the price is, we've got to improve the performance of the product. We've got to get a higher response rate. We've got to get higher sales. We've got to get customers that will react. There's a lot of ways to achieve what you really want. And if you're engaging a customer, hopefully what you find is what they really want, not just what they're telling you they want.
Okay, if I understand this correctly, if a potential client were to come in and say, look, we've tried a few other channels or strategies in terms of reaching out customers, they're doing all right in customers, but we're trying to look for newer methods. We have a small budget to play with, or perhaps someone who's already doing direct mail, but seeing declining response rates. You're essentially saying, look, this isn't just about cost. This is about the outcomes that you're wanting to achieve, and make sure that you, as well as the client, are in sync in terms of what the objectives are for the client in order to best serve that outcome, as opposed to just looking at cents on the dollar for a particular product and resource.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I'll give you a left field example. Let's say a customer comes to us and says, hey, you know what, we're going to go to complete direct mail because our overall performance is just not what we need it to be, and we're going to be able to drop the cost per contact with a potential customer dramatically. And I'll say to them, I hear you. And sometimes you may want to do that with a portion of your audience. Odds are they're already doing that. But you've got that last bit of customers that maybe nobody's touching, that you have the opportunity to touch. And if you can't reach them by email, you can't reach them by online advertising, you can't reach them by ending up, because some people just don't advertise on TV and radio because their products aren't suitable. But if you've got a higher value product, a luxury product, or a recurring revenue product, maybe you really ought to be thinking you touch a portion of that is not responding to your other outreach with direct mail. And you give them something compelling, and you give them something that really brings them in. Someone could say, yeah, but it's costing so much just to try a direct mail piece versus what it costs me to do a email. If your email is not getting open and you've got these customers that could buy a product that's thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, and you aren't touching them and your competitors aren't touching them, I'd be the first one to say, use the tool to reach them so you can land their dollars and you can get them into your ecosystem of sales and customer loyalty. So I actually believe, just like processing systems, in essence, have stages, I believe that reaching customers should have stages. And there's going to be some that are low-hanging fruit and you're going to get at a low dollar price, but you would take the higher dollar price and land these customers in a heartbeat. So you've got to look at it differently. You can't just go, everything should cost me 2 cents, therefore I'm never going to do a direct mail. There's a whole bunch of customers and a whole bunch of sales you're leaving out, and I wouldn't recommend that.
Really, the advice, I guess, we should be giving to listeners, your existing marketing strategy is fine, then keep up with it. But if you do have a budget for experimentation, then run a pilot project with something like direct mail to see what it could do for you. And perhaps using a product like yours might differentiate yourself in the junk mail pile that we receive here in Australia and perhaps other parts of the world in order to get a better response rate, because you're really looking for the quality of the customer that you're able to bring in through that marketing channel as opposed to the cost of the customer acquisition.
Precisely. So if you segment your marketing strategy and you say, okay, this cost strategy is running me, let's say, $50 per sales of 2,000. That's justifiable. You may find out that this whole segment cost you, let's say it cost you $75. Are you going to throw those sales out? Are you going to say, no, I can only pay $50 for $2,500 of sales? So I think you don't do everything for every segment. You get and you pick what makes the most sense. You might actually find that it could cost you less to reach these last 40% of the people that never respond, never click an email, never click an online ad with direct mail, and your overall sales go up substantially, and your real cost per response actually goes down. Now, that's an important thing that does require the testing you're talking about. And you're not going to know unless you dip your toe in the water and you try some of these things very structured in a very well-designed test, and you look at what response you have. What we've seen from our customers that sell high-end products, let's call them luxury cars, let's call them luxury vacations or financial products, they use our product and they come back and use it again, come back and use it again. So these are very sophisticated direct mail people, and they come back regularly. What I can tell you is it doesn't feel like we're the blanket to everybody in their sales pipeline. We're probably hitting a segment that they have been able to test and say, in order to get sales from these people, all the emails in the world will never work, all the online advertising will never work. We need to make sure we touch them so they can see our new product, touch it, and get excited about it. And that's the goal of direct mail. And then our differentiator is it won't get lost in that pile of mail. It will really stand out.
I love the fact that you're talking about engaging your customer through an experience and a level of interactivity that you're offering through your product. That certainly creates an impression and is the bit of what will hopefully be a deeper relationship. I guess on the flip side, people listening in would be thinking, this product sounds fantastic. It obviously works given the success that you've had. Surely it can't be that difficult for competitors that come in and copy the same kind of product. And I'm curious because you're manufacturing the product in the US, not offshore or overseas, which would, in theory at least, be cheaper on paper. I'm curious as to why you made those decisions and how you're continuing to have the success that you're seeing, given the potential of someone coming in with a similar, if not same kind of product.
Yeah, and I think that when you create a new technology, typically takes people a while to catch up. So we created what we describe as the fourth way to weld plastics. And because of that, it lays as flat as can be. So just to give you an example, this is the kind of weld that we have on the product. And you can see that it is flat and as smooth as can be. So the smaller products that are designed for automation, they end up going right through the mail. Now, this particular product was by local Chamber of Commerce right here in Ohio, and they put their Chamber of Commerce booklet in. This is really going to get your attention.
Yep.
When you get a catalog or a piece inside of this or an annual report and something like this, one, you're not going to tear it in half and throw it away. You're going to open it up, you're going to engage it, you're going to look at it. Odds are you're going to save it as well. And if you've created any kind of interactivity with it, and I think that's something that can be done with this kind of product pretty easy. And this is a simple interactivity. You pull this out and you can see the envelope itself has printing on it. So, you've got that individual just in the air, but now you've got that individual playing a guitar. So any kind of thing that requires people to touch and feel, then you're going to get another experience that you just can't get with direct mail. And typically, so the manufacturing process is unique, speed is unique, its quality allows it to run through all the automation. And that's the automation of the print and mail houses, as well as the postal service. And if you can't run through their automation, you're going to end up spending a lot more money on trying to do. And that's really one of the keys to this product line, is it can do some things that others just can't do. That differentiator that I talked about earlier, one of the things you just love to be able to create.
So technology plays a key role there, as well as the differentiation of being able to run through the postal systems. So that's terrific. In terms of reaching out to customers, technology, as I said before, has become so pervasive. A lot of people talk about building of funnels, and in this day and age, they're getting pretty complex, certainly supported by technology. Would you say, given direct mail marketing strategies, that there is a place for simplicity and, of course, old school marketing techniques?
Yeah, I think, again, there's always the possibility that you can try different strategies with direct mail or other advertising methods. So sometimes a postcard is perfectly fine. One thing you would never do is, if you're going to send somebody an invoice, if you still send invoices this way, you're not going to put it in an NVPack product. I will say many of our customers have put postcards in NVPacks.
Oh.
Now, you can mail the postcard directly. Why put it inside of a bioplastic envelope? Higher interactive rate, higher savings rate. It's just a strategy to stand out. Because if you get 10 postcards and then you get one NVPack in the mail, odds are you're going to spend an average time on those postcards that's X. You're going to spend X plus time on the postcard in the NVPack. It sounds silly, but sometimes things like that go right to human behavior. If it stands out, if it's different, what is it that I need to know about this, where everything else is just flipped right on by.
My takeaway would be that it's really about creating an experience that makes a person curious, or at the very least going, wow, this is a bit different, and in order to spend the time to engage with it or interact with it. In this day and age where there's so much happening, what would you say are the key principles to ensure that we're able to get people to pause and spend their time and energy to discover or interact with our particular brand or product?
Yeah, I think that if you're talking about direct mail, it's the quality of the piece that lands in your hands. If it doesn't feel like it should take your attention, odds are it's not. You're going to flip through it pretty quick. You're not going to look at it. But if it feels and looks like I better pay attention to this, and I go back to the one envelope I showed a minute ago, it feels like I should pay attention to this. That means more time engaging with it. And that's what advertisers want. They just want the chance to see my message so that I have that few minutes to turn your head and then have you pay attention. You get them to open, you have really gone a long ways. If you get them to interact with it, read a few lines of it, that's amazing. Because people's attention span, we've all learned we can't pay attention to everything. I don't know about you, but I get 800 plus emails a day that don't even go to my spam. How in the world do I keep up, let alone others everywhere else? I sort them in mass and dump them in mass and hope I don't miss something important. But I figure if it's important, somebody else will try to get a hold of me.
Fair enough. And that makes sense from a direct mail point of view. I'm curious, from your experiences in the technology space as well, what would you say? The technology space tends to be quite innovative, as far as I'm aware. So how would you stand out in that space?
I think we've had opportunities to do that. Anymore, a automobile is a technological space. And I think you mentioned some of the people that have used Envy Packs over the years. Some of them are current customers and continuous customers. There's hardly a luxury vehicle manufacturer that hasn't used Envy Pack. Now, just plug that in a minute. Luxury vehicle manufacturers worldwide are reaching to customers with Envy Pack envelopes. Now, does that mean they don't do anything else? Of course not. They have a process of touching the customers they need to, and Envy Pack is part of that process. It's an interesting thing. When you talk about technology, we had one major luxury manufacturer that designed their Envy Pack so that when you opened it up, it looked graphically like the wheels were turning to drive the car out of the envelope. And it was just graphic. There was no moving parts. It was just how the graphic was designed. It gave you an optical illusion. That is interactivity. That gets people going, wow. There are some people that have used codes in order to bring up a website. And then maybe what you're doing is you're looking at a picture and you're automating a picture. So when you talk about technical innovation that's occurring across the spectrum, a lot of it can apply to direct mail. The longer you get them to think about something, the more excited you get them to do. And that's where quality and look, I tell you what, graphics design is by no means dead. Graphic designers are brilliant at being able to capture your eyes and your heart and your emotions. And if they continue to do that, they're going to win. And they can do that in almost any medium. But if you're going to do it in direct mail, you want every edge you can have. You want it to look great if you've got something that's high end. It's another thing if you're selling, I almost hate to pick on any industry, but I will. If you're selling cereal, no offense, $3, $4 a box, I don't think you're going to be mailing to people an advertisement for cereal.
Creating those interactive experiences is certainly important. I can understand its place in the journey. But at some point, for let's say high-priced products, inevitably you'll get a customer ringing in or speaking to someone within the organization. And the last thing you want is for that experience to fall flat. And now I remember we're talking to you earlier, and you mentioned going to a dealership and look at buying a car where the salesperson introduced himself as Uncle Larry, I believe.
Yeah.
And to me, that was a very simple way of creating an impression and experience that stuck with you, quite obviously.
Oh, definitely did. I bought three cars from Uncle Larry over a period of years. And I asked him, why choose Uncle Larry? He said, everyone remembers my name.
Right.
So he was doing his own branding for his own benefit, even though the dealership has their approach. He was going above and beyond, creating his own brand. And one of the things that I think doesn't happen that much is the follow-up. And I tell you, Uncle Larry followed up. And when he followed up, I heard his name again. They say you have to hear somebody's name 7 times to remember it. Interact with them 7 times. I had probably at least 7 contacts with Uncle Larry on my first car, and there was only probably 2 contacts before I bought the car. But I bought 2 more cars after that, because who am I going to call? I'm going to call Uncle Larry.
Yeah. So there's certainly something to be said about ensuring that we keep that same level of experience, if you will, and a relationship, or investing in the relationship beyond that first touch point.
Definitely. There's so many people today think that they can interact with somebody once, and that's all it's going to take. And it doesn't work that way. And it doesn't work that way today. It takes multiple touches. And it may be, when you talk about a process strategy of using email, using online advertising, using print advertising, radio, TV, and direct mail, you're ensuring you touch them. I still think it needs to be done very effective, rather than just plain shotgun, everything gets blown toward a customer. I think you got to be very careful about that, but you definitely want them engaged, and you want them to start to, if you can, fall in love with what you're offering them.
Given your experiences to date, would you say that there are key elements beyond the out and creating that first impression, as well as follow-up impressions, to deepening relationships with potential customers? You've talked about follow-up as being one of them, as was the case with Uncle Larry, but are there aspects that perhaps don't get talked about very much, but you, through experience, have learned and feel should be given sufficient airtime, if you will?
Yeah, I think that there's always a balance when you're on the selling end and you're trying to engage a customer and you're trying to build a type of customer loyalty where every time they have a need of what you can offer, they immediately think of you. And I do think that there is that level of customer service, customer follow through. Today, I imagine every viewer of this podcast experiences a call to an organization, and you don't get to talk to any individual, and then you leave a message, and then you never get a follow-up. Or even if you do get to talk to somebody and you engage them and you say, yeah, I'll think about it, and they say, I'll call you back in a week, and you trust that they're going to call you back in a week. Follow-up and customer service is somewhat of a lost art today. And I hate that. I really want to know that when people tell me, they're going to go ahead and do it. And that endears me to them. That makes me want to respond to them when I said, yeah, give me a call in a week. They call. Oh, they're doing exactly what they said and exactly what I said. Why wouldn't I engage? And I might say, don't call me back for another 2 months. But I still want someone at the other end of the sale caring about me and caring about what I think, caring about my time, and helping me make a decision I feel good about. I much prefer a soft selling approach personally. Hard selling, or somebody trying to talk to me on the phone and I say it's a bad time and they get rude to me, why in the world would I ever consider that company after something like that? So customer service is key.
Absolutely. Is there something to be said about marrying technology with a product like yours? And I'm thinking of a package I received a while ago where there's essentially a media player that showed a bit about the person that was trying to reach out to me, as well as featured testimonials, etc., all in video format, which I thought was interesting. It also had QR codes that I could use my phone and get in touch with the company straight off the bat. Are you seeing more companies adopting or using technology in old school marketing practices?
I think in the graphics world, you're definitely seeing people using QR codes. Yep. Other ways to get them electronically connected quickly. I think you'll always see gimmicks, and gimmicks can have an impact depending upon what you're trying to do and who you're trying to engage. It might be worthwhile to try some of those different kind of things. Internally, we were talking about that for a particular purpose, where we might end up getting 10 or 25 of those things and send it to 10 or 25 really high value products where we wanted to do education. Mm-hmm. And I think you've got to also be conservative at the time, because if it's going to, let's say, executives, mm-hmm. they may still never see it. It may go to the assistant, may see it, and they may run interference for the executive. So there's no guarantee you're really going to reach the target you want. And that's one of the challenges. So you can certainly, again, try, test. I wouldn't go out there and say, hey, we're going to do this for 25,000 people and we're going to increase our sales 40% by doing this just on speculation. That's absolutely malpractice for marketing.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. And I would be an advocate of running tests or pilots, if you will,
yeah.
to your target audience. If this has been quite fascinating, would you say that there are perhaps a couple of aspects to being able to touch your customers and allowing your strategy to facilitate that perhaps doesn't get enough airtime? And if so, what would they be?
Yeah, I almost have to think about that a little bit. That's a complex question. So when I look at what we do, I would say, and we do a number of different marketing things in order to ultimately reach our customers. And certainly we do email marketing. But the response rates for email marketing are pretty pathetic. I understand that. It's discouraging, but the cost is so low that you're going to get this response. So it really depends, again, on what you're trying to do, when you're trying to do it. When we try to sell 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, maybe 5 million envelopes to one customer for one product, we can afford to take some risk. We can afford to reach out to them. We can afford to keep them in the know of what we're making by sending them samples and engaging them regularly. And we can do that through a variety of channels without being burdensome. The last thing you want to do is have a customer go, enough, stop. So there's always a fine line to doing the right thing to get to the right customer. And it has to be constantly calibrated almost on an individual basis. And that takes interactivity with these customers. The lucky part is some of our customers are really high value customers. So we can afford to make sure we're touching them regularly, but not too much.
So for a large account where you've got at least a few decision makers in terms of making a purchase decision, are you saying that we should almost be talking to these individuals in order to determine how much is enough and what precisely would best help them facilitate a decision?
That I'm really glad you brought it up that way, because some of the larger companies try to create one point of contact.
Yep.
And one point of contact means they probably have already made their decision and they're probably a professional purchaser, and they don't understand what executive management or what thought leaders or what marketing experts think. They just say, okay, we got 500 envelopes to buy because we got to mail something, and they're just going to go price the cheapest envelope they can get? Is there that interaction with them to talk to them about this product might get you a higher response rate? Their goal and their objective is to cut purchasing costs. So sometimes we've been told, only go to this individual. And we've had to say, we understand that, we'll abide to that the best as possible. But if somebody requests information from us and they happen to be with your company, we're going to send it to them. Now, we did have a fairly large client. A couple of the people really got the product in their own mail, got excited about it, and started to request samples and show the samples around their company. And the purchasing agent had a fit. Well, the purchasing agent ultimately got overruled because it was executive marketing level decisions. And they said, no, we're going to use and we're going to try this product. And they did. They've been a customer ever since. So sometimes you run into these barriers, these gatekeepers that really want their thumb on everything. And you've got to respect it, but you also can't blindly say, I'm going to ignore a request from somebody within their company, because that's part of customer service. How do you ignore somebody's request and say, oh, we've been told not to send it to you. You need to go talk to Chuck or whatever.
That makes a lot of sense. This has been terrific, Ross. To wrap things up, if listeners are curious and wanting to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
Two places. Certainly nvpac.com, and you can follow nvpac.com. You can connect to anybody at nvpac.com. But I'd also say my own LinkedIn, Ross Youngs. I'm on LinkedIn. My address is Ohio. There's a few Ross Youngs, but I'm the only one that's involved with NVPAC. But you're also going to see I'm involved with a few other companies. So when you go to my LinkedIn profile, it will talk about a biotech that we're working on right now that is going to really revolutionize drug discovery. So innovation comes in a lot of different ways. And we ended up landing on some amazing innovation because we were working in bioplastics. And now this innovation is pivoting to potentially drug discovery. So do you find an opportunity and you leverage it? We're full believers that if you land into opportunities, you've got to pursue them. You just don't want to be helter-skelter about it. You don't want to be disfocused. So we certainly have teams placed in our different areas of our company so that we can achieve success everywhere. And then we do not bite off more than we can actually achieve success with. So you'll see biotech. Don't let that confuse you. That is me.
No worries. If I understand this correctly, biotech companies, I guess, a spin-off from the technology that you were using for NVPAC?
It was. So we started to work with a research and development firm on bioplastics years ago. And then we started to look at bioplastics from microbes. It was our exploration into microbe handling technology that we got patents on. Then we got funding by ARPA, DARPA, US Air Force, now the NIH. All of that really was building upon a base of something rather unique. Ultimately, I'll be bold enough to say that it will contribute to humanity by bringing a lot of new products into life sciences eventually. And I used to go around saying, in our manufacturing business, it was funny. People would get very serious, and I love them being serious about our business. But there's a few times I've put my hand on somebody's shoulder and say, easy, it's not like we're curing cancer. And let's keep it all in perspective. We're trying to serve customers. We're trying to keep our entire ecosystem functional and working and happy, but we're not doing something that's really going to impact people's lives. So here we are now with the biotech and a potential to really impact people's lives. I got to say that feels amazing to be able to play in multiple areas and stay focused.
I'm just curious. It's a very interesting journey. So, with this biotech company, you say it's able to impact people's lives. Are you talking at a microbiome level, as in your gut, etc., or am I in the wrong track here?
No, you're on exactly the right track. What wasn't really realized 10 years ago is how much impact the human was having by their own microbes that lived in it. Today, science is quite aware that the microbiome, those microbes that live in you, outnumber our human cells 40 trillion to 30 trillion and outnumber our genomics. We all think of 23,000 genes. Our microbiome has more than 25 million genes. Right. 90% of the drug-like natural molecules that turn things on, off, up, or down in our blood come from our microbiome. And this is things they didn't know about 10 years ago. And now all of a sudden, this world has opened up to potential next generation cures or targets or biomarkers that could help understand disease. And with our capabilities, we're right in the heart of that. And it just feels nice to have multiple opportunities to be successful.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating area. I've just explored a little bit of it not too long ago, and I look forward to hearing more from your developments.
Terrific. Another reason for people to connect on LinkedIn, because I try to keep people as informed as possible. So I appreciate it so much to have this time with you today.
No worries. Thank you again, Ross. And we'll include links to your LinkedIn as well as to EduPack, etc. in the show notes. Ross, thanks so much for doing this.
Take care. My pleasure.